This podcast is proudly sponsored by Gyro Drilling. They provide world-class drilling solutions for all types of projects. They specialise in auger, aircore and RC drilling. Head to the team at Gyro Drilling for all your mining needs and see how they can help you with your upcoming project. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. As this podcast grows, every subscriber helps. From those of you who watch this on YouTube or to those that listen on Spotify and Apple, every follower helps. If you do this one favour and hit follow on whatever platform you find us on, I promise I will continue to look and find fascinating people across the world and bring their perspectives to you. Thank you and enjoy this episode. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me in the show today is Ben Phillips, the Executive Chair of Norfolk Metals, which is listed on the ASX under code NFL. Twitter or X would be $NFL, so it's caught up in the noise of the National Football League. Yeah. But this is an exploration company with a few projects and particularly a bit of interest in uranium more so now. So welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
It's going to be a bit easy with Ben and Ben. Yeah. So talk us through yourself, your background within the mining and maybe the finance realm for those that are unfamiliar with who you are and what you've done in your past sort of handful of years.
Yeah, nice. So last 8 years I've been working in corporate finance where we're normally involved in vending private deals into public companies, and rather than running through them all, that's probably a better way to state it. You know, we're normally on the vendor side of, introducing deals to listed companies. And then I was on the board of Mandrake Resources with the guy James Allchurch, and that was one where we had it was actually a stock that was going to be delisted entirely, and then we recapped it at 2 cents. Got an asset in there to sort of recomply and get it going. And then James found a really formidable asset near Julimar, and it had a great run. But that's an example where I've, gone and raised the $4.5 million recompliance, that sort of thing. But with Norfolk, it was different. There was a deal that we were doing with a Philippines asset. It was a big copper gold porphyry asset, and I needed some help with the DD. So I called on a friend, Jeff Davis. He's an older guy who ran Medusa Mining for many years in the Philippines. Yeah. And he helped us out. And then he said, Ben, can you help me out? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll help you out.
What time was this all
happening?
This
would have been like, if we listed in 2022, this would have been like late 2020, something like that. And he was dropping a permit in Tasmania. It was very close to his heart. He's born and raised in Burnie, and there's a fault there called the Roger River Fault, and he'd spent about $750,000 doing some work on that. And he dropped it, I picked it up, held it for a while, said, let's try drill it at a later stage. And then the market started to turn quite favourably. And there's a bunch of guys I've worked with for a long time, guys from JP Equity, guys from Whistler Wealth, and we said, let's list it. That's probably a smarter thing to do with this. Didn't have a big EV, let's get on the boards. We did that, ran through the process, and we thought we need a complementary asset as well. Tried to be smart, read the market a little bit, and we said, let's go uranium. And there's a guy called Todd Williams based out of Adelaide. He's a really good geo. He's the MD of Unico Silver, and he had a permit in South Australia, which we now call Oruru. It was held in an entity called Black Lake, and we picked up that as well and listed in March 2022 with two what you would call, very greenfield, blue sky, high risk exploration permits, and got on the boards in March 2022.
Yeah, and I mean, since then there's been a fair bit of deployment, but I think that the transformation has been the recent acquisition and the recent sort of bringing into the portfolio in a different jurisdiction altogether. So talk us through just that opportunity in Argentina and how it's come on the radar and just, Yeah,
before talking Argentina, it's important too for shareholders to understand we never we're not turning away from Oruru at all. So we've done a maiden drill campaign at Roger River and Oruru. And at Oruru, we've got 10 holes out of 17 with uranium in them. Albeit it's a thin layer of clay, which we have now modelled and we know where it is, but it contains uranium uniformly across that entire basin of which we hold. We hold the whole basin. Yeah. So I always draw a parallel to Areva Energy that used to drill the Cunamora project near Aban. Way back, they'd report, 25 ppm, 50 ppm results. We've got many multi-hundred ppm results through Oruru. Yeah. So there is uranium there. But when you're drilling a basin that's unexplored, you need money. Yes. So we've done a program where all in it's like 24 grand a hole. And that's, demob, mob, fuel, accommodation, geo, all that stuff.
The full project plan.
The full project, 24 grand a hole. And we did 17 holes. But that Orroroo probably warrants a bigger 50,
spend.
Like 100 hole program, and we will do it. We will drill Orroroo again. And that is still the flagship uranium project for Norfolk. So just to cover that first. But if you talk Argentina, before talking Las Altares, which we have the exclusivity over, there's a reason for going to Argentina. And really it's because Argentina imports 500,000 pounds per year of uranium from Kazakhstan. They've got 3 nuclear power plants operational. They've got 1 nuclear power plant in discussions or commissioning, whatever, and then other, small modular reactors. But they import all that feed. So if you've got regions like Chubut, where you've got heaps of uranium in the ground, but you're not mining it, that prospectively could be an area of great interest in the future. So as a public company like us, that's, heavily invested in uranium, we're essentially going all in uranium, we choose, where we're going to look next.
Yeah.
And, we see a lot of projects. We see stuff from WA with uranium, Queensland with uranium, Athabasca Basin. I can't tell you how many projects we've seen that come across the desk in Athabasca Basin. But if you talk about Argentina, I like to draw parallels of, others nearby. So in Argentina, there's an asset called Cerro in Chubut. And Cerro is owned by the CNEA, which is the Argentinian government's nuclear agency. And that's a pretty impressive asset where you've got over 10 million pounds running over 2,000 ppm. And it's highly probable it could be suitable for ISL recovery, which means it's not open pit, which people don't like in Chubut.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk of the government privatising or JVing, partnering to get that uranium out the ground. Because if you're Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, and you're getting pesos together to buy uranium from Kazakhstan in US dollar, and your pesos all over the place, not so good.
No.
Not so good. So that's why people believe it could change. And then you look at the people around it, right? So you've got Cerro there. We surround Cerro. There's even a permit called Cerro Sur or Arroyo Perdido inside what we're looking to buy.
Yeah.
And there's definitely uranium hits on that permit. And right now in our DD, there's a N43101 from U308, which is that's a publicly available document published in 2010. And there's been drilling done on the permits that we are looking to buy. We're not publishing that yet, but I can talk about it because it's in the public. We're learning ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a U308. That's the name of a company. It's a weird name because it's also
I was going to say that is uranium.
That is uranium. Yeah, that was the name of the company. That's published 2010. Anyone can look at it. There's drill holes on our permit. Really positive. Also positive. CNEA's drilling inside their permit within our permit has uranium at the same level as Cerro. So that looks like a really attractive package of land. Then you look at what else is going on around us. To the west, you've got Meseta Central. That's owned by UR America. UR America is led by Ian Stalker. Ian Stalker sold Uramin to Areva for $2.5 billion. So you would think, Ian knows something about uranium, definitely a lot more than me. But to the south, you've got Piche Resources. Their prospectus is live right now. That's run by a gentleman called Gus Simpson. Gus, I can't quote the year, but Gus founded, delineated, did the studies, built Wyoming's asset, Peninsula.
So literally from the ground up.
From the ground up.
Yeah.
And then they've gone and sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of uranium from that mine. And Gus is going to Argentina in Chubut, south of us. So you don't want to say, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. But if you look at the price that we're paying, we're talking about, $1 million a company value for an enormous land holding next to the darling asset of that region.
It's a pretty good spot to be.
It's a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
In 6 months' time, 12 months' time, I fundamentally do not believe you better buy that for $1 million. And for us too, as a company, you can't just buy dirt. You got to be able to explore it. As we work through DD, it looks like we are becoming more enthused by what we've got our foot on.
So then again, there's a hell of a lot to unpack there, but even just getting, you said, all these packages coming across your desk and then just seeing Argentina as where you want to focus on.
Yep.
I mean, talking through this bit of the due diligence process, what really is going through your mind other than what you've just talked about there? I mean, what was the real like glowing beacon that said, look, we're going to go?
Yeah. Good point. It's a good. I've actually used this analogy before, but I almost liken it to like when you're an exploration company, you've obviously got to explore, but you've got to place the opportunity, or is it possible? Is it plausible, or is it probable? Like, is it in your favour? Yeah. So with Norfolk, if you don't fundamentally believe that uranium could go from 89, 92 a pound to a proper sustained 110, 120, we're probably not the company for you, because we're not developing a uranium mine. We're not building a uranium mine with a known resource. But we believe that uranium is in the earlier cycle of what could be a continuing bull market. Yeah. We say maybe the clock is sort of at the 2004 period. In 2008, it went absolutely parabolic, backed off. Then Fukushima a bit later. But that was hitting prices of 140 a pound in 2008. Yeah. End of last year, I don't want to quote exactly what we hit, but it was triple figures. And even Norfolk pre-drilling, people were really excited. You only need, one drill hole to make a company. But when you're looking at opportunity, you must be aware of your chances of success. So I always, it's a bit out there, but I like to liken it to, say, like, let's say you're game fishing, right? Like you're trying to catch a big fish. Yeah. So you've got a boat, like you've got a big boat. So the boat is NFL, that's Norfolk. Then you need a captain and you need a crew. So like, call me the captain for now. Your crew's your board and key management personnel. You need a lot of fuel and you need beers. That's like money. Yeah. That's like shareholder money. Yeah. But then you need a lot of rods, you need a lot of lures. That's your geos. Then you get lines in the water. But where are you fishing? Like we are committed to the uranium ocean. That's where we're fishing.
Yeah, you're not just going to pick it up and then move it as everyone else starts getting stuff.
But then when you're in an ocean, you've got trenches, troughs, currents, reefs. You've got areas that have fished a lot, areas that haven't been fished that much. Like, we're not going to trawl around with just one lure in the water. We want to have more shots on goal. So like with Uru, that's a really good asset. Yeah. We got a line in the water there and we're trawling. But like, if I just went and got another asset that was that early stage in South Australia, it's too risky for the company. Like Wallaway Basin is an exceptional area because there's uranium there, but it's not the Frome embayment. No. The Frome embayment's proven with multiple resources. It's too risky to have many assets like that. So then we look at an area that has, as we've stated with Argentina, a lot of room for upside.
Yeah. And it really has pivoted very quickly, the Argentinian business
other people thinking the same thing. But to try and liken it in terms of like risk, we'll get more lines in the water in other areas. Like I'm still very favourable to other assets in Western Australia and Queensland. Like people always argue, what's the government going to do? Which way is it going to go next? But no one really knows. No. But if Western Australia or Queensland changes their mind, then all of a sudden the assets in those regions, incrementally, they just go bang. Yeah, they're worth a bit more. But do I want to pick up another asset in Queensland or Western Australia that's got no drill hits, that's really early stage like Uru? No, we won't. Yeah. But I think if you look at the cleansing statement that we put out on Monday, and we have to cleanse the market. We did a small raise, but it clearly states as well that we're in early stage negotiations with other assets. So,
okay.
My vision is by the end of this year we'll be a very well favoured game fishing boat with 5 or 6 lines in the water. Yeah. And then when we get a good fish on, it might not be me being the captain because it's easy to drive the boat when you just driving the boat in a straight line, follow that way, turn the boat around, but you get fish on.
Then the whole thing changes.
It's game on. Yeah. It's game on.
So then if we go to unpacking this Chubut region, and we'd spoken a few times and just saying how the whole dynamic has really shifted with, uranium, but also mining in that sort of region and the whole of the country. So talk us through just about the evolutions of the almost pro-mining approach that's now starting to make its way in there just because of the economic opportunity that a lot of the people, government, and just everyone in Argentina is sort of seeing.
Yep. It's I've got to be a little bit careful commenting too much on like economics and on a macro level. But I suppose with Javier Milei, he's the president. He was he's an economist, but he's played professional soccer. He's been the cover singer of a Rolling Stones cover band. He's a showman. Yeah, he's a proper showman. And he's a figure or a voice. I mean, look at it, right? If he's saying we're converting pesos to USD to buy uranium to feed plants, they're not anti-nuclear.
Yeah.
But they're feeding their plants.
They're just losing a lot of money in the process of getting it there.
They're fundamentally, they're not doing very well in terms of what they got in the ground versus what they're using to feed their plants. That's a positive. But if you look at his movement, there was an article on Reuters the other day, and their inflation is like, you don't want to talk about it so bad. Yeah. But he's reduced the monthly inflation from 25% in December to 13% in
That's a massive drop.
It's a massive drop. Yeah. But then you start to look too deeply at it and you get caught up in the, they've got a whole blue dollar, which is like, not the actual peso that represents the exchange, the US dollar.
There's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
There's a lot going on there. It's hard to comment on. You sort of got to back a thematic, and that's why I draw the reference to, guys that have built uranium mines and sold them are in Chubut, and we are surrounding the most favoured asset in Chubut, and we are currently discovering we've really got potential to look at previous, historical drill holes with uranium on our permits, definitely inside them in the Cerro Solo Sur, but it's really...
It's a decent package as well inside of land scale from memory.
So a historical hole in that N3, in that 43101, it is like the scale's 5 kilometres and the holes are, 1.5, 2 Ks apart. So even you get a hit there and a sniff there, there's massive infill that can be done.
So there's a lot of work to potentially be done once you go through it. And you were saying, the process from a point of view of when you guys can actually start, getting access. What are sort of how are you guys going through that process, and then when can you actually start?
So when you sign an exclusivity deed of 75 days and you're doing DD, first you find independent lawyers. That's what we've done. Good mate of mine, Joe, he runs Pampa Minerals in Argentina. We're going to use his lawyers, independent of GCOM, independent of us. They'll do all the legal, title, DD, that sort of stuff. When it comes to the geology, we've got a guy going to the CNEA office in Mendoza on the 14th of this month, and then he'll try and get as much information from them, and hopefully we can get some stuff that is compliant to put in a JORC table and publish. Yeah. That's the goal there. But really, you sort of start spending, when you're talking about access, you start straight away, because you put this in the market, you expect to complete it, so you're only losing time if you don't start doing something. So we'll also contract a geologist, whether it is, part of like a GCOM community or whatever, just to go and start talking to the local landowners that encompass that area. Yeah. And the discussions we've had, I believe it's sort of like, 6 or 7 different agriculturalists that own area in that Las Altaras permit. Okay. Which is, Oruru, people said, you'll struggle to get access there. You're about to drill. I think I dealt with 27 farmers, of which 17 gave us access. So it's just a matter of work. You just got to get boots on the ground and.
Okay, and again, going through your mind, you've got this massive package. There's been a bit of historical drilling done. Have you guys started putting out the roadmap of even where you'd like to start within all of this?
You definitely go back to where there's sniffs. Like if there's that U308 report dated 2010, and we can line up that is favourable for us. You immediately go back to those specific areas straight away. Yeah.
So then, you said 75 days. This has been announced.
18th, I think it was. 18th. No, it was signed on the 14th, so 75 days from then.
Yeah.
So what's that, end of June?
Yeah, so looking towards before just the end of the financial year. So you'll be a very busy man coming into that period of time. Yeah. And going forward, you said the plan is to get boots on the ground and probably build out the team as well. So, what are sort of the other conversations that are happening in the background to then progress this potential package in the company?
Yeah, with Oruru, we've met our expenditure for this calendar year, but that doesn't mean you don't do more work. But what we want to do there will probably be, a bit bigger than what we did last time. So therefore, we'd like to do some geophysics first. Is the current thinking. So that's something that's running in one parallel. In that same parallel, you've got access agreements, working to be sought further north of where we've already been granted access.
Yeah.
And then drill planning wise, it's very easy to put together a larger pattern drill program like on a GIS system, so that's what we want to do. To actually get the authority to do it, that's different. We'll get all that tucked away before we can drill there. In Argentina, I haven't run a program there before, so I'm taking advice from others, but it's starting with those agriculturists we mentioned. But you would expect to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on the Las Altaras project in the calendar year 2024, providing with your shareholder vote and everything, it goes through sometime with a NOM or an EGM in, call it, July or late June.
Yeah.
And I draw back again too. We don't want to stop with just 2, because when you talk about going all in on uranium, and I say again, if you believe that uranium goes to 110, 120, 130 more, people get really hung up on jurisdiction. Like, oh my God, where's that jurisdiction? Can you mine there? Can't you mine there? What about this? What about that? I actually sat next to Duncan Crabe on the plane back from Adelaide 2 weeks ago. We're in a meeting over there, and I was even asking him, like, how long, like, do you think for another uranium mine to get up in Australia? And he can't really comment on, where or what it could be, but it's the better part of 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it really is.
Yeah.
So if uranium goes ballistic in the next 2 years, and it's been proven before, it's not just about, do you have assets in a region where there's, a favourable government putting in money to build a uranium mine there? It's like, what have you got? Have you got pounds in the ground? Do you have good exploration projects? And also as well, we haven't seen heaps of money being spent on exploration.
Oh,
yet.
no. Uranium was one of the most hated commodities for a while.
Tipped. And if it goes ballistic, it will tip. And therefore, when you're a company that has, many irons in the fire or lots of lures in the water, you'll be more favoured to take on more capital from others. Could be a JV, could raise more money. But that's where we're trying to position the company.
Well, and if I go back when you're talking about, Argentina having 3 nuclear reactors and, 1 potentially in construction, a few modular reactors, and the fact that they, again, purchase a lot of their uranium, you can see that from a state point of view that they'll be very interested in finding other uranium deposits to feed their own country and potentially become a global player.
Exploiting what they have.
Yeah.
In the announcement we did for Las Altaras, there's actually a lot of work when you can't reference, like you're doing neurology saying, oh, look what's next door, but it's not a JORC compliant resource. So you have to find out how that resource is measured. And even Cerro Solo, it's actually done by the International Atomic Agency combined with the Nuclear Energy Agency, which is part of...
Jeez, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful, yeah. I've definitely got one of the letters wrong in that acronym. But they measure it as how much uranium can you get out of that resource for less than $130 US per kilo. Like, it's a weird metric,
Yeah.
But then they favour all of them in Argentina in that report, like call it 12 deposits, and like, what's more favourable, more likely to be developed. And again, Cerro Solo comes up at the top, and it's because of the grade, the depth, So there's been studies done on it. So it's a I wouldn't want to say it's ready to go, but they almost don't need to find more. They need to change the way they think of what they've already got.
I didn't want to have this whole conversation without talking about the South Australian project, because that was really, as you said at the beginning, the cornerstone of Norfolk, and that was really...
And we listed as Uranium Explorer.
Yes.
We haven't gone in the last 3 weeks.
And just shifted
no. We listed as Uranium Explorer 2 years ago.
I mean, for those that are unfamiliar with what was happening there, and you said, most of the financial expenditure into the ground has been done for this year, doesn't mean that you're not going to be doing stuff in the future. Talk us through a little bit about what you guys were doing there. I mean, where it is, because you're talking about now having packages and tenements in Australia and South America, and potentially others that will come to the market, as you've talked about. I mean, talk about that Australian project in South Australia.
I mean, the key points for Uru, and this comes from the guys that have worked on it as well. It's about location. It's 2.5-3 hours from Adelaide, and then you can drive there. You stay at the local pub. There's a guy called Nick Pearce. He works for Elders, so he knows every single person in the community. He's the CFO of the local footy club. He plays on like, I'll say C grade, but it's probably like G or D or something. But
plays footy.
He definitely. We watched him play at the opener, so he definitely plays footy. No, but Nick's a really good bloke, and he oversees what happens there. Like, it's just a great town. There's 660 people. And I can't go and speak for all of them, but as a general momentum, they like us being there. We wrapped up drilling. They're like, oh, are you coming back? So it's a great place to have a project. That's number one. Number two, in all the material we've done, it was a very basic level. The sediments are the same age as the foam embayment. It's a very broad statement, but it is true. But the whole reason that project was pegged by Todd Williams and called Black Lake in the beginning was because he spent, I think he called it 400 or 500 hours looking at all the historical petroleum holes where they'd drilled, and there was these API, which is American Petroleum Index. They measure with gamma for the lithology in a hole. They're looking for uranium, looking at the different sediments. But he looked at these gamma wraparound anomalies, and of 22 holes randomly put in this basin, call it 7 or 8 of them had these wraparound anomalies. So he said, great, that's got potential for uranium, and we picked it up. A lot's happened since then with geophysics. There's been a lot of opinions on, the channels run this way, maybe it's in relation to the river, the decline of the basin, all this sort of stuff. But the point is, we did 17 holes, and 10 of them had uranium.
Yeah.
It's like,
more than 50% strike, right?
Yeah. But, you've got 2 centimetres here, you've got 15 centimetres here.
Yeah, it's varied there as well.
It's thin. It's at a point still of, do we have something that could be commercial? And if it was commercial, is it deep incising channels like Beverly, or is it more of like a floodplain like Honeymoon? In the second last hole we did in January, that's when the geos have interpreted to be what we have found as a floodplain, which is very encouraging because a floodplain is flooding from what is a paleo channel, which means you're closer to where the uranium is. Because all the paleo channel is old. It's an old river.
Yeah.
It was a river, different
Dried
sediments
out.
on top, but then it's got a different kind of sediment, and now water's flowing through it with uranium in it.
Okay, so, and again, you guys have had that, you've done a lot of work, but as you said, it really needs a fair amount of extra to...
Just needs more money. It's great to have 723 square kilometres.
Yeah.
We've got it, but
But I think the reality as a small cap is you don't really get that luxury of having all that cash on hand.
So I'm not going to go and spend the $3 million we got now, just going to go and thump, 300 holes or whatever, 150 holes there. You've got to think strategically, So, and there's the parallel I like to draw as well, because, I'll try and keep it high level. GCOM is a TSX listed company. There was a TSX listed company called Consolidated Uranium. Consolidated Uranium was originally a spin out from NextGen for gold. Then it got recapped and it became a uranium company. And that was in 2020. And they had less than a 5 mil market cap at the time. In 2023, they sold for 300 million. And that's because they picked up assets of good opportunity in favourable regions that could have change of government control, change of people's view on uranium. You could have favourable discovery based on the favourable geology. They made smart decisions and pick things up. And as you get bigger, you start with, exploration project. Then you get something that's got a couple of drill holes in it. Then you get a little bit of exploration success here. You can get more money, you can grow. But
and the jigsaw puzzle all comes together.
Yeah, so we're on a thematic now where, essentially all in uranium, not just what is very blue sky, but expensive exploration in Uru. We've also got something that's in the middle of what is a phenomenal area. Like if you look at Argentina, where we are, that's like a foam embayment.
Yeah.
It's not a walloway basin. It's like a foam, but now we've got that. And then maybe next we pick up something else that's got some drill hits in it. We build.
Well, it gives people the reason to keep an eye on you if there's more to be coming. And I think it's undoubtedly uranium has piqued a lot of people's attention. Personally, I've been a bull for a while, and I think with the renewable energy outlook that we've got, everyone wanting to shift away from fossil fuels, uranium has that appetite, and everyone knows that you need it for nuclear energy. And finally, there's a bit of investment into uranium. You're seeing some of the big players restart
we didn't
some of
mention on this
their
podcast,
mines.
but the whole Biden thing. Biden saying, no more
Russian
enriched uranium.
And there's been the complications with supply from Kazakhstan as well. Yeah. There's a lot of factors that are going into, how do we secure supply or find supply? Because there hasn't been much investment, which you talked about earlier. And I mean, this has been, 2 and a bit years. I think it is 2 years now for you in the role, was it? Or is it a year? What was the...
what is it? It's 2 years and two
yeah,
years.
so it's over the 2 years period. And I mean, since you've been there, you've probably been building out a group, or there's been people surrounding you on the board, and now so probably an expanding team. I mean, who was alongside of you in your corporate structure? And I mean, what is their wealth of experience as well?
So Patrick Hollywell is a non-executive director on Norfolk, and he is a accountant, and he's held some really good roles as CFO for Pentanet, one of many CFOs for De Grey. So he's very good corporately as well, and he keeps me in check as well. And I'm like, I have really dumb ideas, and he goes, "You can't do that, mate. That'd be really stupid." So Pat's really good like that, and Leo Pilipau, he is a geologist that owns drilling companies, and he was like pivotal when we first drilled Tasmania, because he actually was very familiar with the rig that we took from WA through to Tasmania. And Leo actually owns a company in Laos and a company in Turkey that drill. So like he's very helpful too when you look at projects and you've got guys saying, "Oh, this is how we did it, this is how we do it." And he's a very good geo, and he's still running a drilling company. He's good at running the ruler over things. But I think I mentioned as well before, like with my theory going back to like, game fishing, lines in the water, what you're targeting, I'm not opposed to people smarter than myself. Like you got to know your gaps, and we are growing to be. We will once again. You can't foresee the future, you can't predict the future, but I think by the end of this year, I think we'll have probably a better board than we have now. Maybe we'll have some better.
And bring in that experience and bring in that. Yeah.
I'm going to say, there's a limit. A lot of the work when we listed, it was pivotal in raising the $5.5 million that we did, and promises are made, and we've delivered on them, and we've been good custodians of capital. We've still got money, and we've drilled the projects we listed with, as we said in our prospectus. We had 2 maiden drill programs. It runs its course too when you need more hands on deck.
Yeah. And going forward now, the next 12 months, it's going to be an acceleration from the sounds of it. And there's a very methodical approach from what you've talked about today. But for listeners and viewers that are going, okay, there's a lot to unpack here, but going forward, there's a few key points that I should remember or expect coming from NFL. What would some of those points be from today?
Number one, we never forget Oruru, because if we can get a favourable result there, it's like it's so game on. It's just a joke. It's in South Australia, 2.5 hours from Adelaide. There's uranium throughout that basin. It's my job, our job, Norfolk's job to work out where it's coming from, why it's there, and how much is there, because that's exciting. In terms of Las Altaras, we expect to see the standard process of, due diligence being completed, news coming out in geology, EGM, NOM happens. I would expect we do more of an executive search over time for guys to assist me in this vision that I'm outlaying. And then I would also, make the assumption that we won't be a 2 uranium project company by the end of the year. I think we'd like to be more like a 3 or 4. And that's because, like I meant, you asked me in the beginning, what do you do? I'm often the guy selling the deal to the ASX Co. So we sell, and then in this situation, we're buying, So like, we're not going to buy something that blows up our structure. So with that Las Altaras deal, the better part of $1 million, I firmly believe it'll be worth more than that in time. We won't go and buy some other asset either, or contemplate another asset that blows out our structure. Because while you're still sub 100 million shares on issue, and you've always got $3 or $5 million, you're very well poised to capitalise as much as you can from any kind of favourable exploration, any kind of favourable neurology from your next door neighbour, any kind of favourable jurisdictional turn. You've got to keep that structure right.
Yeah.
So we
no, that's good to hear, because I think that is one of the things that armstrong a lot of small caps is when the capital structure blows out, or there's convertible notes, and there's all these other factors that come. 60 million shares
on issue, 90 million options, and it's just it doesn't work.
And it sort of brings complications later down the track, and it's difficult. And I think that's really from, as you said, your business dealings point of view of how to structure things and make sure that you're doing it in the best interest of shareholders going forward. And those that are interested in the news flow that's going to be coming out, and potentially reach out to you and pick your brain about what's unfolding. I mean, where can listeners and viewers go to reach out and follow NFL?
That's a really good point. So when we complete, subject to shareholder approval, we complete this Las Altaras. We keep looking for more. you can't be too facetious or say we're a compliance listing, but we did list with a very low EV with some, very greenfield projects. But the brokers that are involved in Norfolk, 40% of our register at least are guys that were in there at the IPO, and they're also guys that are, a stone's throw away or like a phone call from me, and they've supported us the whole way through. And when we raised $1 million in whatever December pre-drilling, I do that from the chair in my office. This money we've just taken in with the Las Altares announcement, we just used our 7.1 capacity. There's a couple of very interesting new uranium names on our register, which they probably wouldn't appreciate me blabbing them just yet, but we'll get there in time. We'll blab in time. But the next job will be, talking about raising money, the next job is to, also, get out of the chair, hit the eastern seaboard, talk to more people.
More podcasts.
More time with Ben. That's it.
There's a fair bit.
There's a lot that we've never done.
Yes.
We've had an incredible re-rate in November 2023, phenomenal re-rate in November 2022. Sure, goes up, comes down, but now I see more of like a staggered, functional, methodical view of building the company out. And again, I hinge it back. We are relying on a uranium. When I say relying, wrong word. We are backing a uranium thematic. So it doesn't mean we fail if we don't get it, but that thematic will unveil itself in the next 24 months. You look at lithium the last 6 years, it's had some phenomenal cycles. And when it comes off, Goldman Sachs says this, it's over, it's ruined, and then bang, it's back up again. Yeah. You look at copper, I mentioned that deal with Jeff Davis. We did that copper deal on that company 3 years ago, and copper was like 8,700, like, oh my God. I think the other day it's like 10,000.
Yeah, it's over 10,000.
It's broken out, it's on.
Yeah.
People have been talking about uranium forever. They say longer the base, higher the space. And
I haven't heard that one. That's a good one. But it has been, because uranium has been in the doldrums for a long time. And suddenly we can talk about how people's perceptions of it, but it's completely changed.
Yeah.
And it's such an exciting time.
It's like there's so many metrics that work in the favour of it going incredibly nuts. That's what we're backing.
Yeah. No, there's a lot. And from the sounds of it, by the time you come back and speak on the show, there'll be so many more updates to have. But
we will.
Thank you so much, Ben, for joining the show.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Marketable podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow the Marketable on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.